a pageant contestant. It's like, and world peace. Everything has got to end in
And
world peace.
exactly, just can't go wrong. It ends nicely.
Yeah. Get your press releases from Madge and peace to the world. That's the
You can't go wrong there, no.
yeah.
Well,
Is it possible you may be biased in that particular?
Happy New Year, everyone. I'm saying hello in the chat and reminding people to ask questions. Um, Sorry about the false start for the people on YouTube. So we hopefully have it working properly now. Don't know why, but it came up as a private video to start, and so I had to redo it. So this episode, we're gonna make our predictions about what we think is, possible, probable, unlikely to happen in the next year or two. And so it's a high risk episode for us because the data has shown that we tend to be very bad at these kinds of predictions, but it's also a fun conversation to have. And the reason I think we're very bad at these types of predictions is we always tend to underestimate how much Google wants to maintain the status quo. So if you want the slam dunk prediction, predict that Google's not going to do much and they're going to drag their feet on everything, and you'll probably have the most accurate prediction. But we like the more exciting ones that make us look bad later. So hopefully we'll get some of those too. Be sure to ask your SEO questions, or if you have predictions you'd like to share, mention them in chat, and maybe we'll mention them on the air. So if you feel really strongly that something's going to happen this year, let us know. We want to hear about it. To start, I wanted to talk about the search engine roundtable uh, article, and we'll get to our sponsor in a moment here. But I wanted to talk about the search engine roundtable article about Bing copying the knowledge panel from Google. And over the years, there's been these events where Bing copies Google, and there seems to be an ongoing pattern over the years of Bing copies Google. And I kind of liken it to watching a football game where one team's strategy is always to use the other team's previous play 100% of the time. And I look at that strategy as very lazy, very uninspired search executives. Like, there is no bold move in that. And you can't win the race playing that type of game. It's horrible for brand, it is horrible for market share. We're always going to be last to the table with a feature. What does that do to market share? It erodes market share. Being last to the table is not a bold move. Um, and we know that Bing has the AI advantage right now. So there is an opportunity on the table to be bold and to grab market share. And, my first prediction, I guess, is Bing is going to not be bold and is going to follow Google's move to maintain the status quo, because Google doesn't want change with AI. They want to maintain their market share dominance in search as long as they possibly can. So if Bing makes no bold moves, that is great for Google. And so the strategy of emulate Google maintaining the status quo, I think it's horrible. They're going to squander their whole lead. They're going to squander the whole thing. They get the lead and they ruin it because their search execs are lazy and uninspired. So what should they do, but they won't because they're lazy and uninspired? What they should do is set it up so that ChatGPT can interact with live search results in the ChatGPT interface, not the football bat they engineered into search, because nobody gets productive work done in that. They don't understand that AI is a productivity tool, and these search executives don't do real work with their product, so they can't connect the dots. It makes no sense to them, and so they engineer elaborate football bats that don't meet the need. And so, you know, my hope is that we get access to live search results and live website content in AI in the ChatGPT interface where it is a productivity tool. That is the thing everybody wants. That's the thing everybody wants. Why can't they get that? Lee, why can't the search executives get it?
I don't know why they can't, but I'm gonna disagree with you on a few things. I agree with you on some and disagree with you on some, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it's ratings week. I just want everybody to know that. So I think the first part of what we were talking about is emulating Google. I think there is an element of that in business that just must happen. If your competitor has a feature and the marketplace seems to like it, then you've got to have it or you fall behind. So there's gonna be some emulation there. And let's not forget that Microsoft was the first one to put AI interacting in the search, sort of, where you could interact with it, maybe not in the way that you prescribe, but they were the first ones there. So they're making some moves in that direction. And playing with OpenAI recently, there are times when it will go and do web search there. So it's not really it. I think they're moving in the direction that you want, just not nearly as rapidly. And I don't know why the search executives don't just go, screw it, it's going to be bad, but it will get data back faster by having a bad prototype interacting with things, maybe not in the ideal way, than we will sitting on our hindquarters. I think they do have an opportunity to push the innovation envelope that they're not taking advantage of, which is a little disheartening.
Well, the problem is that they put it in for a day and then they took it out. So it's not we need years to innovate this thing. It's they put it in, it went off the rails, and they ripped it back out. And
Yeah, but
they didn't rip it out because it was popular. They ripped it back out because they're fearful.
Well, you understand that in this particular environment, political and otherwise, the perception is even more reality than it has been historically. So if you're perceived as putting, a weapon out there or something that can be used in unsafe ways, there's a backlash that is, and we don't know the scope of it because we haven't seen anybody just absolutely put their head on the chopping block and see what happens.
But here's the thing. Here's the safe step one. They can put search results into ChatGPT. That's their own thing. They own all the rights to it. They can do that. That's a thing they can do, and they suffer no liability on it.
Yep.
Why don't they do it? They're cowardly. They're cowardly.
So let me give you guys a perspective here. In a large organization, as an entrepreneur, taking risk, putting your head on the chopping block, that's what entrepreneurs do. In a large corporation, there is no benefit to doing those kinds of things. I make a big risk. Upside is I get a good quarter, I get my name, I get my name in lights for a quarter or a month. Downside is I'm the guy that destroyed something, I'm the guy that got us in the news, and I lose my job. There's a lot of fear that takes place in large organizations. I agree 100%. We did had, we'll look at Burger King, the Burger King strategy. What was their strategy? I don't know if this is true or not, but I've always heard that their strategy was open up a franchise across the street from McDonald's. That was their franchise. That was their model, and it ensured that they'll always be number two, because they're never innovating. They're never the one going out and finding the consumers, finding new consumers, finding new distribution methods. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to open across the street from our competitor. Corporately, that's a very, very safe maneuver. And that's as illogical as it seems from the outside. Internally, it's an extremely logical choice because there's no risk. There's no risk of making the mistake, no risk of being the guy that launches something that gets a bunch of blowback. And I would suggest, like Lee, I agree with you 100%. Like, okay, yeah, these days politically, you got to be very, very careful. But I'd say it's been like this for 30 years. It's been like that, like regardless of the political climate. Being safe in large organizations is always the preferred method. I think I've talked to you guys and mentioned that I've had people argue with me. They didn't want to do something because it lowered the conversion rate by 0.01%. Yet I was bringing in more traffic. But because it lowered the conversion rate, they don't want their name on the line where a conversion rate went down.
Well,
Right.
I'm gonna reference Charles back to Charles here. So the pushback. What do you think is gonna happen when these executives are held accountable for squandering the lead they had in AI? You had a lead in AI. What did you do with it?
So I'm going to give you my cynical response is unfortunately too many executives and too many large organizations are never truly held accountable for poor decisions, or more importantly, for lack of a decision. They're held accountable for doing something wrong, but they're not always held accountable for not taking the action that should have been taken. The question's always like, why aren't we doing more with AI? That's something that's happening in every corporation right now across the country. Why aren't we doing more with AI? So as a VP, what I'll do is I'll tell one of my managers or directors, hey, we need to get involved in AI. They'll do some kind of effort. Whatever it will be very, very safe. And now I can check off the box and say, we're worrying about AI. Whether we're doing something or not really doesn't matter. I can report to my boss, we're doing something with AI, who then reports to their boss, who then reports to shareholders. And it's like, yep, we're working on AI. We're doing this, we're doing that. And then everybody's like, okay, people are doing something, as opposed to, notice I said doing something as opposed to accomplishing something. Again, it's my cynical take on it. It's unfortunately it happens more often than not. It's the safe choice. Now, here's something I will say to anybody who's sitting in a large organization who's listening to this right now. Personally, and I was just going to say this hasn't hurt my career, but maybe it has hurt my career and I didn't realize it. I've always taken the risks internally because I found that the folks above me are so hungry for someone to take a risk because so few people take risks, so few people try things. If you unabashedly say, I tried it, it failed, but here's what we learned from it, I've never really had anyone come back. I'm trying to think of any scenario where I've done something quote unquote risky in an organization that's overblown back, maybe once or twice, but it wouldn't even be risky. It was if I told people what I did, they'd be like, yeah, why did you do that? That was kind of stupid. But even then, I didn't get any blowback. I just got someone say, yeah, let's not do that anymore. It really wasn't, and it was never an issue. But yeah, corporately, taking chance, there's very little benefit corporately to take a chance. It's always better to take the safe choice.
I would agree with you because, going back, you look at like when the clones started coming out for desktop computers. It's like the thing was nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. It was always the safe choice. The same thing is true. I was explaining to my son not too long ago about the way HR departments work. we're going to go get this person in, and they didn't work out, but who knew? Because they had 10 plus years experience, which checked that box. They had a degree from this university, which checks that box. So we didn't know. So even the Burger King following McDonald's, if that particular location doesn't work out, you're like, well, who knew? McDonald's picked a bad spot, so they got hurt too. And again, um, there's no reward for that, sort of bold action. So I don't know, Ted. Basically, based on what Charles is saying, I don't think your dream's coming true this year, my friend. I think
I think
prediction is safe.
My failed prediction for the year, and it'll probably be failed, but it's the one I'm rooting for, is that there's a change of leadership regarding AI and search, because they're squandering their first to market advantage. And so hopefully somebody realizes, oh shit, we're missing the bus on our own invention, and they scramble into action mode. Because what I don't want to see is them work at Google's pace. They're like, oh well, Google's going slow, so we have time too. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible idea. Terrible. But like I said at the beginning, we have a great track record of being wrong on predictions. So let's talk about predictions in the press release space. Madge, what do you predict is going to happen this year in press releases?
Good shout. What do I think? Hopefully they don't go down and Google doesn't slap them. Um, I think they will get a lot more powerful this year. Why do I think that? I think the authority and the relevance that they have, especially the top tier publications, they already rank, whether you call it for parasite keywords, they seem to be ranking really well. The last couple of tests that we've done, we see Yahoo and the top tiers ranking within 24 hours on page one for major terms, or even taking the featured snippet. So my plan for this year is to make sure we keep hold of the top tier publications for our clients so they can take advantage of them, right? They are going to get a lot harder when it comes to, or the distributors will get a lot strict with their terms and conditions and their guidelines due to them knowing SEOs are trying to take advantage of manipulating PR from an SEO point of view, stuffing keywords, hyperlinking, and so forth. So from that aspect, I'll give you an example. MarketWatch, they've removed all hyperlinks. Why have they done that? They're going in the same route as Bloomberg. They did that last year. So now MarketWatch has also done it. Now Bloomberg have also got rid of every PR distributor out there. They've got the name out there. Now they only want people who can contribute directly to Bloomberg can accept it. Otherwise, you can't get through. So from that aspect, you've just got to keep on top of PR from that point of view. Making sure your PRs are newsworthy. They are announcing something timely. From that aspect, it will end up getting released. Otherwise, if you start spamming them, they won't look at you twice. That's right.
So let me ask you this, Madge.
Mhm.
The one of the things that you do is you've got sort of the legendary Madge's secret sauce. Nobody knows all the secret sauce pieces, but basically it's more than just distribution. You're actually sort of building some links into the press release process.
Correct.
Do
Yes.
you think that other competitors will begin to more aggressively emulate that to bolster the performance of their press releases or to compete with Magic PR?
Some of them already do it. For me, Lee, it's about staying 2, 3 steps ahead of my competition. And the way I do that is I see what the trending topics are, what people are using for link building. We used to use Google Stacks. We used to use cloud stacking. We've dialed down on that because, yes, it's powerful enough for local, but when it comes to national and organic keywords for a lot more competitive keywords, it's not as powerful, right? So what I've ended up doing is buying my own private blogging network. So we have a PBN network over 100 sites. I have a Google News network, which I built starting off 2018. So we started in 2018, but I saw my competition also leveraging Google News, right? By, oh yeah, we do Google News approval. So by staying a step ahead is making sure we're using link building strategies that work now, right? And we can implement on the back end. So when we do a PR campaign, yes, it's not one thing we do 3, 4 different things. And hopefully this month, and Ted, you guys will know because I've already mentioned it, we're bringing out digital PR. From another aspect is we need to build relationships with journalists. We don't just want to do PR syndication. Yes, I already have a beautiful distribution across the US, but we want to cater for the UK as well as the US. And having top tier publications in both countries. So if Lee or Ted come to me and say, Madge, it's good that you can get Yahoo, but can you get us USA Today or Forbes? Then I could say to you, yes, we've got a journalist sitting there that is willing to work with me. So staying ahead of your competition and making sure you can build things inside your system where other people can't do, right? You don't just do a typical PR campaign by giving them a report and then saying, thank you for your service and please use us again. You've got to go that extra mile with your client. And that's what I like to do. I hope
Awesome.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So let's move to Lee's predictions of the next year.
I've got a couple. When you said we were doing a prediction show, I was like, all right, there's a couple that are in the back of my head. So one, we have talked about here and privately as well about Google's infrastructure being struggling, having struggled with scale for quite some time. And we know that because, we test and we measure, but it's not widely known, certainly not in the mainstream press. I think this is the year that those cracks show publicly because they are in so many ways struggling to keep up with just the increasing amount of stuff that it takes to crawl and process the internet, even without adding all the new AI content and then things on top of it. I think that this is the year when the press gets a hold of that, and then Google starts to have some questions about how large they can possibly be. Are they at their peak? So that's one. Separately, I think that Gemini starts out their new AI that's coming out, the big models and stuff. People had a little chance to play with it, but I think that it comes out and it's better, but it forces improvement in both Gemini going forward through this year and OpenAI, so that by the time we hit December, that you will have content that is largely indistinguishable from human written. I think this is the year when that happens. Just looking at the speed and the iterations. If I went back and looked at where we were in February of 2023 versus August versus December, it's an exponential curve. So
That's an interesting prediction, because kind of what you're predicting is that the need for technology will shift from detecting AI to detecting human. That'll be the easier problem to solve at that point. Do they have the right kinds of typos to be a human written document?
Well, the bold prediction in that is when we reach that, because human written content is not necessarily well SEO'd, top ranking content. And I think that there will be a degree by the end of the year of realization by the SEO community that this is not a push button solution. Right, whereas right now everybody's looking at, oh, I've seen my prompts and I use this AI versus that AI and I stack this one on that one in the following ways. I think that people will start to realize that it's not the key to page one. That's the bold prediction. Because right now, every SEO that most of the SEOs that I know are like, they're hot on the AI. And if I do it in the following ways, man, I'm getting this great content out. And I'm like, yeah, but does it rank? When you put it out of the box, does it rank? And people are doing different things than what you're doing with the supplemental content, which is engineered a very different way than where people are creating original content.
Yeah, I predict my method's still gonna work this year.
Yes,
Hopefully,
I would
wrong
agree.
about that.
I would agree, but it's no fun because you can take almost using your method, you can take, a crappy article and SEO it.
Yep.
And it'll still be a crappy article with interesting SEO'd supplemental content. So, people like the idea of a well-written, it reads well, it converts well, it ranks well. I don't think we're there yet.
All right, Charles, what's your big prediction for the year?
All right, big predictions. Google's new Core Web Vital INP will be delayed because nobody's ready for it. And then everyone will start freaking out and Google like, don't worry, it's not in the algorithm yet. It's not in the we're delaying it. They'll announce it. Whether it's part of the algorithm or not is irrelevant. They're going to announce that it's being delayed. That's my first prediction. I think I see a lot of angst about helpful content and people don't know what to do. So I predict a lot of the white hats are going to exit the industry and or start calling themselves conversion rate optimization specialists or just like how we had when link building started getting hit years and years ago, everybody became content marketers. There'll be something similar to that again this year, because people will not know what to do because they're not making any of their decisions based on data or science. They're making it based on what they think in the little echo chambers that they live in.
So do you think it's going to be conversion, or do you think they're going to, invent a term?
I think they're going to invent a new term, and I don't know what it is. I haven't seen enough people talking about what the next phase is yet, other than right now we're at the angst stage. Nobody has any idea what to do. They've just and I can kind of feel people are giving up. Although interestingly enough, a few things I've seen over the last month is folks are saying you have to optimize less, which I don't understand. They think, oh, well, Google's figured out SEO, so now we have to optimize the pages less. Our sites should be wrong. I've heard that term many times, and I just love hearing that.
That type of advice, it smacks of a thought experiment that's not using data. It's you got to be wary when stuff like that hits the table. That requires, skepticism.
In my own self-interest, I want to applaud that publicly. Go for it, people. Make it bad.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear we're going to start hearing the SEO is dead again this year. Even remember that used to be a thing that would come around every 6 to 8 months, but yeah, and now here's my not my real prediction, but my hope is that Google, well, maybe not my hope, but Google is getting themselves just one step closer to identifying users and authors. They are desperate to try to identify who wrote what and is it trustworthy, especially with an election year. That's going to become a big thing about what content's trustworthy, what is trustworthy. And Google's trying to position themselves as an authority. We've seen it in the SERPs where they put authors' names next to things and the new profile schema. They really, really, really want to identify who wrote what.
And this is a new data set because I'm assuming that there will be some sort of a manual infractions counter associated with these identities. And so if you do things that are fact checked and proven to be false, you'll accrue these, this negative fact checking score.
I'm not even sure they're going to be that sophisticated. They
Well,
could
you'd
be.
have to. I mean, you can't just track authors. I
I
mean,
think they're
all
trying to
right,
figure
so
out what they're trying to tie authors to topics. They're
Yeah.
sort of
Well-
saying, okay, Lee writes about
but
hydroponics. And
what's
if Lee
the
writes,
goal? Does that make that content any more truthy than bylined content? So yeah,
Well-
you
No,
have to have the metric. You have to have the metric.
You don't necessarily, because you can make the assumption, and it will be wrong a chunk of the time, but you can make the assumption that Ted writes about SEO. He's an expert on SEO, as opposed, because Ted's written 500 articles on SEO. Charles has
Yeah.
written 3.
But we've
Therefore-
seen SEO blogs where people take credit for thousands of the worst pieces of untrue advice and statements, and it does not attest to truthiness at all.
so maybe I
Yeah,
should clarify, it's not so much that Google's going to do it right, but they're going to think do it right. So, but I mean, I agree 100% with you, Ted. You're right. It doesn't, there's no way it's going to test truthiness. I think the way they're approaching it is they're saying, okay, Lee's written 100 articles, Ted's written 200 articles, but Lee has more followers than Ted. So now Lee maybe is more trustworthy than Ted is. They seem to be trying to track all
Yeah,
that information.
Byline
Lee
is
more
a
accurate?
factor, is all that is.
But yeah, Lee
Yeah.
may not be accurate. I mean, we all know you can turn on the television at any point you want, and there are experts. Some of them have their own shows, and they talk about buy this stock, don't buy that stock, and they're horribly wrong all the time. But they're still considered experts, and I think that's going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening, but Google's going to figure out how to make it happen online. They're going to figure out how to amplify bad people with bad advice,
Well,
but just happen to have a following.
I think it's a great idea from their standpoint, because then, as you've got just a flood of content coming out, maybe, it's a pre-screen. If Ted writes another article about SEO, or Lee writes another one in your example, both of those should be considered. But Charles, starts an SEO blog. We should ignore this dude because,
Yeah.
he's only written 3 articles.
Right.
What does he know?
Unless Charles is able to show that he has more followers, and somehow, and then now Charles is more valuable because, yes, he's got a new blog, but he has, 1,000 followers, where Lee and Ted each only have 25 or something like that. I think they're going to try to use some kind of follower count to understand whether the author is trustworthy or not. They're going to.
I've got at least 30, sir. At least 30.
Well, my fake profiles always do better than my real profiles. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems more of an authority metric, like backlinks,
Yeah.
than anything.
But I think
yeah,
it has interesting implications, because they do sort of implement that. I mean, where would you use that? It's not about truthiness, because Google said they don't want to get, be the arbiter of truth. They don't want to get in that game. Same as Facebook, even though they've, been forced to by, congressional action to a certain degree. I think that it is useful as a filter on which content to process, and maybe potentially as a weaker ranking factor, getting into that. So, that sort of authority part of the EAT, you could get an authority metric by implementing byline.
So, Honey, do you have a prediction for us this year?
Yeah, you're gonna have to do it through here.
Oh.
So, what are you thinking?
My prediction is they're going to be hyper focused on AI. And so a lot of other stuff is going to fall to the side, and everything's going to go towards you having to run ads in order to get rank on pages.
So you think Google's?
I think they're broke. I think they're broken.
All right, so that's kind of a prediction that more exploits will emerge and Google won't fix them. So a continuation of that behavior.
Yeah.
That's a good prediction.
Yeah, I had a related discussion with Charles the other day, last week, on a similar vein, where, without getting into detail, it seems that there are certain exploits that Google has no interest in even trying to repair.
I think they're waiting on a new power source, like from diamond plates, which I think are getting close to being ready. And then when that changes, then the computing power is going to change, and that'll change everything. So if that happens this year, that'll be crazy. And I think they're getting close to creating,
Some of those chips.
some of those
Possibly,
sources.
but I still have a lot of faith in the fact that the 500-pound gorilla doesn't like to move.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. Going back to your first thing, Ted, if Bing is not chewing into market share, why would you?
Yeah.
There's no business case for it. If Bing
Well,
was up
that's
30%,
other than the fact it is the one single thing that MSN and Live Search and Bing have wanted, like at all costs. Like they will take a loss on the revenue if they can get the market share. They are happy to get that number up, but it seems like the one thing they're willing to screw up and drop the football on too.
Mhm.
So if you really want the market share, Bing, you're gonna have to make a play that isn't the last play Google made.
So honey, if you're thinking that Google's broken and there's going to be more exploits, are you thinking that testers are going to have more of a field day this year? Are there going to be more public exploits, or are people going to keep that?
I think people are going to find stuff and they're going to keep it secret. I don't think people are going to share what they find because it's just going to be too valuable. The competition's getting pretty tough. So
I think there is that cloud. Uncertainty brings in more caution with your type of intellectual discoveries. And there's a lot of uncertainty, so one of the ongoing prediction games is the SEO apocalypse. So all right, so AI's coming out. What does that mean for search? The SEO apocalypse prediction. And the way I kind of view that is, change is the one certainty in life. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So change will eventually come. But when do you think it will come? And so, like this SEO apocalypse brought on by AI in some fashion, in some form, I'm kind of in the belief space of 3 to 5 years. I know other people are like, no, it's out at 10 years. It's closer to 10 years. I know people that are, no, it could be under 3 years.
Mhm.
And so, everybody has different feelings on that. That's a good one. Like Lee, where do you stand on the SEO apocalypse?
I'm still under 3 years. I think that so last year, and I've shared this piece. There was a company that developed a little technology to help you fight a traffic ticket in court. And what they did was they fed an AI, a lot of the case law, and they had a little earpiece that would fit in your ear. And while you were in court, the earpiece would listen to the judge and the prosecutor and would process that and tell you what to say to beat the ticket. So basically, it was like having a lawyer in your ear, as a large language model. And it got fought from the legal industry and taken down because the law is unclear about whether the software company was practicing law without a license because it had an AI that was assisting in the courtroom.
But the AI passed the bar.
Yeah, but the AI passed the bar, which is true. So here's the fun part about that. What it means is that any sort of knowledge work that is codified out there in databases like law can be processed by these increasingly powerful large language models, and the output can be as good or better than a human in terms of understanding, because humans reading and understanding all the case law involved in any particular thing takes a whole lot more time than it takes AI to process it. So in my estimation, somebody probably starting this year will introduce an AI that SEOs. Maybe it goes and it reads Ted's page and it makes some, change things, to SEO the page better. It's sort of like taking Quora and having it go do this thing and come back with, these other recommendations that are more specific, or the ability to implement those things, change the code, change this content with this content, change these tags with these things. Maybe even the ability, because it's WordPress, to go and log in and it'll change the page for you. Those things will come and they will get better as the large language models get better. So I don't see, in 2 to 3 years, those sort of models will make your average SEO obsolete. Because, why do I need to hire you for $1,500 a month when I can, for $5 in credits, get the same impact? Which means that you have to be at the very top of the industry to win. Your average SEO is gonna get their ass kicked.
Lee, I just heard like 1,000 smiles get wiped off faces with that prediction.
Sorry. But see, everybody thinks that's like bad news. I'm like, no, that's good news, because it's coming. You have a chance to prepare. You have a chance to pivot and adjust based on that new reality that's coming down the road.
All right, so
you're 3 or 5 or 10 years, it's coming.
So what you're kind of saying is SEO specifically has a tough time ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're not saying is that there won't be a marketing problem for us optimizers to optimize.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, the models being trained on the internet can only learn what's out there, which gives you the opportunity to find exploits through testing or analysis, or to, take things up a notch where the standard advice, the standard models don't find, the additional outlier things. Like, for example, you're not going to have, it's going to take a while for a model to get keyword density and push it hard. The current models don't do that because most stuff out there falls within a very narrow range of keyword density, and we're trying to emulate that. So,
it's very difficult to perfectly tune a lot of factors. Like, this is an engineering problem I've actually taken a crack at numerous times over the years. And the problem is, by the time you get out to about factor 7 or 8, you're doing things that are impacting factors 1 and 2 and 3, and so you start getting those things into ridiculous over optimization. Not that over optimization is something that Google is punishing, but it's cartoonish tuning. So you're looking at it going, that isn't right. And so as you're adding factors to tune onto a page, you're impacting factors that are already on the page. And so getting that perfect balance, it seems to require a human brain to do it intelligently, and just mechanically adding factors to a piece of content. Yeah, typically at about factor number 8, you are doing insane things to that document. And so I have yet to see an auto tuner not fall prey to that. And so the auto tuner that can look at 75 factors that have overlapping concern and not over optimize any of them. Get it, here's what the numbers you need, here's an output with the numbers as needed. That's the trick, and I haven't seen that emerge at all, even remotely closely.
Mm.
So yeah, I kind of predict there's still no easy button in that, because that piece of engineering, I don't think a large language model can solve that. You need a different type of beast that can reason.
You do, but here's the thing: the person that creates that. So Charles goes out there and he creates, SEO.ai, and it's killer, and everybody's like, oh, I love this thing. I'm pushing the button and I'm getting my clients, optimized, pages. They don't realize that, you know, if it's out there, everybody's got it. It's no longer a competitive advantage, and it becomes a marketing problem because when Joe the plumber looks and says, "Hey, I don't need Charles the SEO. I need SEO.ai, and for $50, I can get my site optimized as well as all these SEOs." Then why would I pay you $1,500 a month when $50
Yeah.
solves my problem in my
And
head?
that's exactly where Honey's prediction comes into play, that these exploits aren't going to get fixed. Using AI on an exploit is going to be the fast track, and who cares about the tuning of the main content at that point?
Mm.
And so, yeah, those predictions kind of converge in that area. And so I think AI tuning the perfectly tuned main content is kind of a pipe dream, but AI taking advantage of the exploit that ranks a document, man, that's happening now. So we're
Yeah.
already seeing that.
Until you can engineer an AI to reverse engineer the algorithm, then it's going to be a pipe dream.
Well, I mean, it would be amazing to see a tool where you can say, I want a piece of content written to these metrics, and it should be on this topic, and it actually writes the content to those metrics, and it does a decent job of it. So like that tool does not exist, where you can input the metric qualities you want out of content and get that content out tuned to that standard. That no such thing. So
Not at this
still
time.
waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, still waiting to see that thing happen, where by factor 8 it's not doing stupid stuff. Um yeah, I love these predictions. I guess we better get to some questions though. Um, let's see. A lot of happy New Year's out there. Thank you, everyone. Same to you guys. Hope it's a good one. Um, let's see. SEO Podden says, you inspire me to become a better SEO. Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. So, yeah,
Cool.
keep at it. Be skeptical. Don't even trust us. Prove things for yourself, and share what you learned, because if there's no peer review, it's not science. So you got to get that feedback loop for it to count. Love it though. Keep it up. Um, let's see. When internal linking in a silo, what ratio should I have regarding the keyword I want to rank for? Let's say I have 10 supporting pages. How often should I use the exact match anchor in the text? All right. Few things to unpack here. Oftentimes, I like to invoke the 80/20 rule. So your interlinking can often be solved with widgets like, popular product carousels, new arrival carousels, similar product carousels, recent posts, related posts. There's all kinds of widgets that naturally cross link. And then you have contextual links, where you have a word and you have a page about that word, and you link, in the content to the page about that term. And so that's another way to do it. You also have your primary navigation that naturally cross links a large part of your website. And you also have your footer navigation for usually the SEO odds and ends that you need to handle. Those things are going to do the bulk of what you need to do in terms of silo structuring. So when SEOs go out there and look for the perfect link geometry, they can kill months of times. I've seen SEOs spend 6 months, 8 months, 10 months on trying to find the perfect link geometry. And what's the value over the things I've already mentioned? What's the incremental benefit? You know, and yes, there are perfect link geometries because there is page rank, there is a mathematical geometry that is optimal, but is the ROI there for all that effort spent? And what I've found is that I can rank a new website, a one-page website, to number one in about 3 weeks, done it multiple times. Other people have done it multiple times. This is a thing we can do. No silo. So why would I put in 6 months of silo research into something I can do in 3 weeks without it? So I'd start thinking about minimum viable SEO. Just because something does work doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing it. And you probably want to ask it questions like, can I rank without it? What does it do to my bottom line? Do my customers really love that outcome better, or do they not know or care? What does it do to my profitability? Can I scale a roster of clients while doing that? Or can I only do it for a small number of clients? But as soon as every client wants it, I'm swamped. Those might be more important questions. And if you're getting 80% of the value of siloing using these quick and dirty techniques, is all that time and effort worth the incremental boost that that'll bring? What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I'm going to go with this a similar way. First, nobody knows. Let's just start there. There has been zero published research or testing that says this is the optimal link geometry, this is the optimal anchor text profile, this is the perfect way of doing it. So the notion that it exists, it's known, and this is how to do it, and if you don't do it that way, bad things happen, is a problem that will screw up your execution. So the way that I would approach this is say, look, internally, if you've got, in your case, 10 silo pages, I would tend to lean towards a diversity of anchor text, as opposed to, I mean, you could do all 10 exact match, you could do, 5 exact match and 5 variations or something like that. I would tend to just, get a multitude of different things, because I think that the variety of anchor text Google understands, and it understands the topic of your page, and the variety of anchor text helps support that better than some other ways of doing it. Although I could also make an argument for exact match. Just implement it and go. Don't spend as much time in research unless you're going to set up tests. If you're going to set up tests to do it, and think about it, execute those tests and whatever. But from an execution standpoint, if you've got live sites, pick something and go. I don't think that the incremental value of one way over another is worth spending more than 5 minutes thinking about. And we've already spent more than 5 minutes thinking about this. So now the other thing, just as an interesting piece, Charles, you have a bit of a large site, or 12. So how do you guys think about internal linking and siloing and all that stuff at an enterprise level? I mean, what do? You just got this new piece of content. Now what?
So I'm gonna answer the direct question, like, hey, what should I do? I have 10 pages. If we're talking about internal pages, what would I do? Same anchor text, move on to the next thing. Kind of going back to your point, like, just get it done and move on. Unless I was already ranking like number 2 or 3, then maybe I would do some other mix. So what do we do if we have a page? So it's all about systems. It's all about making sure that you have a process for getting pages seen, indexed, crawled, ranked, understood by Google. If we have some kind of hub that we want to rank for, I will build into our templates an anchor text that goes to that hub. Now, the problem that we invariably run against is that we have one keyword we can use. So we end up using that same keyword 100,000 or 200,000 times across the site, which honestly is way too many times. Can you get penalized for that? No, you can't. Will it have points where it will diminishing returns? Definitely. What I've tried to do internally is to get different templates for different page types, kind of different templates, so that we can vary up our anchor text, knowing that if I have 20,000 of this and 20,000 of this and 30,000 of this, and I'm just kind of making up the numbers, it will provide us more benefit because we go away from that diminishing returns, because that will happen internally. But you really want to make sure, and WordPress and most CMSs have this, where they'll have a way that they internally link items. The only problem I found that most CMSs, at least most kind of off-the-shelf CMSs, do way too much internal linking, and they end up bleeding out all your authority. You see this with like the tag pages and whatnot in WordPress. So you just got to be careful of that kind of stuff. And so that's one of the things I always do, is I make sure from an enterprise, number one, are we only linking to the canonical version of the page? Yes or no? And are we able to vary the anchor text? Typically, no. So that's another reason why I think smaller and medium-sized sites will always be able to run circles around large companies, because you guys can, dodge, duck, dive, and dodge better than we can.
Excellent. Cool.
All right. Next question. When dealing with faceted navigation, do you index and no follow as a general rule, or how do you deal with faceted navigation? So the thing I like to say about this, the best solution, in my opinion, is if there is something that Googlebot should not interact with, then when you see the Googlebot user agent or the Googlebot IP address, don't draw it on the page. Then Googlebot has no choice in the matter, nothing to decide. Because if you let Google decide, they often decide the wrong thing. And so you can't really trust Google to do the right thing with those things they shouldn't be getting into. And so right now there's a big epidemic ever since Google retired the URL parameter tool of Googlebot getting into infinite crawls on faceted navigation and cart interactions and all of those kinds of things. And so it sounds like you're seeing that. You're seeing the fallout of the URL parameter tool being retired. And unlike what Google presented to the public, they do not have it handled. So, yeah, I would say go into your application if you have developers, and don't even draw those things if the user agent is Googlebot. Just don't allow it. What do you think, Lee? How would you handle that?
I think you nailed it. I mean, you've dealt with the enterprise and all of these sort of things, and you've played around with different ways of handling it and the different problems that come with it. I would just lean on what you said 100%.
That's the high touch way to do it, because it requires web development to suppress the things that Googlebot shouldn't be interacting with. And that typically includes faceted navigation, any type of sort or filter feature. Sometimes that might mean search, not always though, and add remove from cart, view cart. Again, those are things that Googlebot really shouldn't be getting into. The other way to do it is to convert those things into web application implementations that Googlebot doesn't interact with. So like with the add to cart button, with that part of that epidemic where Google is adding adding products to cart and removing them infinitely, and then your crawl budget's gone. The typical solution to that is to convert your add and remove to cart features. Don't make those A tags. If they're A tags, they get crawled. So make them something that Google doesn't crawl. Make them a button tag. And so you can go in and do it that way, but there's no guarantee that Google won't start crawling button tags or looking for, elements with click handlers and crawling things with click handlers. Like, you can make bots that crawl those things. Just because Google hasn't done it today doesn't mean it's not coming. So if you really want to future proof yourself, anything you don't want Google to interact with, don't even draw it on the page when you know it's a Google bot. What do you think, Charles? You probably deal with this every day.
Yeah, so I would probably not block, well, I'm not going to say some of these things out loud, but here's what I would do. I would do JavaScript links. If it's something you don't want Google going into. Now, to your point, Ted, yeah, Google just suddenly just start following JavaScript links, and that, that would be a problem. But that's what I would do to keep Google out of navigation I didn't want it to go to. It would also be a great way, hypothetically, of course, to go back to doing PR sculpting. Only show links that you want Google to follow, and then don't show them the links that you don't want them to follow. Just be careful, you can get in trouble, because if you don't let them follow certain pages that you need to have on your website, then they may not think you have those pages on your website, and then you may be hurt as part of the algorithm. But yeah, I say go JavaScript. It's been my kind of go-to, mainly because that's something the front end developers can do very quickly and easily.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you're recommending that they take the A tag and they turn it into a div with an on-click handler.
Exactly.
Not to be confused with the other popular SEO JavaScript link thing, which is an A tag that has a JavaScript protocol in the URL. That's not what you're recommending.
Right,
Both
correct.
both of which are referred to as JavaScript links from time to time. All right, let's go to the next one. I am considering your route, Ted, of going in-house e-commerce SEO and get commissions. That it can be very lucrative, but you kind of need a thick skin for it. How would you select an e-commerce company to work for or with? I would want them to have a large number of product categories. If you get in and all they sell are paperweights, that's a really hard thing to scale to the moon. If they have 500 categories of goods, that's going to be a lot easier to scale up big. Oftentimes I want to know that they have a fulfillment center. So are they sourcing their own product and they have the best possible margins because of it? Or are they drop shipping or affiliate themselves, of which point you're getting 4% of their 4%? So really understand the organization. Is it a real retailer or is it kind of a retail front on some sort of other marketing scheme? So yeah, bigger the better, right? If they have 500 categories and 45,000 SKUs, and you can do something site wide to all those pages to get them to all go up, I mean, that's how you make fast money, right? Um, the other thing I would look for is I'd want them to have a number of stores, not just one, because I want to work with their smallest store so I don't cause harm and I get that Midas touch where when I discover something good to do on the little store, I can say, hey, go do this to all the other stores, and I get the oohs and ahs of how everything I recommend causes double-digit growth. So you really want to have that, and you can't do that if they only have one property. So in my ideal situation, this would be a business that has multiple storefronts that are all fulfilling out of like one warehouse. But keep in mind that the landscape has changed. A lot of these legitimate retailers won't have their own warehouse, but they'll have all their product in Amazon's warehouse and it'll be fulfilled by Amazon. That should probably count if it's a big enough operation. So don't say no if they don't have a warehouse, but they do have a fulfilled by Amazon. You just got to look at the scale of the operation. Typically, at the scales that I would want to operate at, you're probably looking at a company that's at least 50 employees, and bigger the better. Like, when I did mine, it was 300 employees at the company. So it's a pretty big concern to start with. And they're probably struggling. They're probably, covering their costs and a little more, and they really need to explode. And that's kind of, a really good thing. Are they getting by, and can I come in and be the hero and shoot them to the moon? And so that's kind of what I look for. There's more than one way to do it, though. There's a lot of success to be had with working with just a jewelry store. Like that's viable too, but it probably won't have the same growth curve as like 500 categories and 50,000 SKUs. It could, if it's like one of the big industry leaders. But yeah, keep in mind though, it's hard being an in-house SEO. The in-house SEO is largely going to try to keep the other business units from destroying the SEO. And that makes you the no person, and the no person is wildly unpopular. The no person is prone to getting people whispering in the executive's ear, hey, we need to get rid of this no person. And so you really kind of need buy-in up front and acknowledgement from the executive team that you are going to try to keep the business from shooting itself in the foot, and it's going to be wildly unpopular. But if you don't defend me on that, you get shot in the foot. So that's kind of an important thing there. All right. What do you think, Lee? Oh, 1 second. I lost my audio.
No, I think it's Lee's
Oh,
mic
Lee's muted.
because I
Oh
can.
yeah, I muted myself on the mic. I would defer
Alright.
to Charles as he sits in that position right now, being the in-house no guy. So Charles, talk about your popularity internally.
I think we should have an entire day on if you want to go in-house in SEO, here are things to think about. Because Ted, what you said is spot on. Yes, I mean, I showed that in Rockstars. There was a company I worked for, and they had great rankings. And 6 months after I left, or 8 months after I left, they crushed their rankings, like just destroyed them because there was no one to tell them no. And they were folks that I know were just waiting for me to leave so they could implement whatever they wanted to implement without me causing trouble. Yeah, I could spend a whole hour just talking about what to look for in an organization, what you're going to find. Often, if you want to go in-house, I'm a big proponent of going in-house. I've been in-house for years, so it's obviously not a problem. There's just so many things to think about that people don't think about. Often folks that hire SEO, they're hiring SEO because they've run out of channels, or they don't know how to manage their other channels. And so they think, oh, we need this SEO channel. And now they suddenly become over reliant on you. And that becomes a weird dynamic. And also you have to look at the company. Is it a profitable, I have a theory. You only work for growing profitable companies in a growing profitable niche. Why? Because a company that's growing and profitable in a niche that's growing and profitable is going to give you raises and bonuses. A company that's just scraping by, and or an industry that's just scraping by, you're not getting raises and bonuses there. So it's these macro things you have to look at as well. So yeah, I'll just say I agree 100% with you, Ted, and there's so much we could talk about this. We could do a whole hour on this easily.
Yep. All right. Regarding faceted navigation, there will be a lot of URLs. Do you ever use robots.txt for blocking, or should the pages be no index, no follow? Really, it's a navigation. So I defer to my previous answer. Don't draw it if Googlebot shouldn't engage it. I see.
Robots.txt won't keep Google out of a page.
Yeah.
And according to Google, no index, no follow it's a no serve. It's not a no index, no follow. So the best way to keep Google out of the page is like Ted already said, don't let Google find the page. That's really the best solution.
Let's see, I see a lot of case studies of websites dying due to AI content. Anecdotally, I see the exact opposite. So I think what you're doing with AI matters. So just know there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And paid links, yeah, there's still a lot of paid links out there. What do you think is the real reason the websites shoot to the moon and then dramatically fall and die? I think there's a million answers to that question. I think we could look at 10 examples and find 10 different situations. Um, so yeah, that's probably what's happening there. There's a quick death route, there's a slow decay route, there's a chaotic route and then gone. And those things, those types of volatility patterns, they're diagnostic of the types of problems you're probably facing. And so yeah, the question's just far too general to give you a specific answer. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think in general, you could give the broad answer that um, you were missing some things. There are some categories of things that you were missing, and when Google discovered or relied on those by switching the algorithm, down you went. That would be the quick answer on that.
Yep. All right, let's see. I have a locations page with links to 100 service location pages. All right, so this is kind of in the context of local SEO. And what I've been teaching for local SEO is very different than what 99% of SEOs doing local SEO do. But the first thing I want you to understand is that Google in local SEO, generally speaking, I know there are exceptions, it's going to look at dozens of pages on your website. So when I see a local business with hundreds of pages, you've overinvested in unique content. You've overinvested in the number of pages you need to optimize for. And Google's not going to work with all of them anyway. They're going to give you, for local SEO, a much more restricted budget of consideration. And so when I see people killing it in local, they tend to be killing it with dozens of pages. So I would want you to kill it with dozens of pages before you grow and scale to a next level up. And so people are rushing to that next level up and going, why doesn't it work? Because you should have had it working with dozens before you tried to make it work with hundreds. And the Cartesian product of pages is one of the common problems here. This idea that we have uh, 20 locations and 15 different services offered, so we need to Cartesian product the two into a page count. Cartesian with links, don't Cartesian with pages. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll try to say, hey, you know what, I want to rank for, locksmith in Chicago and, within 30 miles of Chicago. And within 30 miles of Chicago, there may be, 104 communities. So, I want to build locksmith, for each of those 104, locksmith pages for each of those 104 communities. And there's lots of internal link geometries and things like that. My recommendation to everybody that wants to look at what works in local is to go and do a search in top 10 cities in the US, top 20 cities in the US, minus LA and New York, because those are different ecosystems, and just look at the top ranking pages, the top ranking sites. They will rank for dozens of communities typically, and there's a couple of primary internal link patterns that they utilize. Just look at what they're doing and model it.
Now, you can use location service pages where you can join the two, but it only works if your scale is small enough. And usually, where it shoots you in the foot is when you want to grow out your locations or you want to grow out your services. And so you get ruined on the scaling side of things if you go with that design pattern. But if it's small enough, if you're like, hey, I only have 3 locations and 3 service keywords, and that's all it's ever going to be, fine, can join them. But you have to adhere to not scaling to hundreds then. Because the second you scale to hundreds of pages, you broke the agreement. All right. Let's see. Buying $5 links from Fiverr, do they really work to boost ranking? I wouldn't. And the reason I wouldn't is because you probably shouldn't be buying like individual links and stuff. That it's the numbers are against you on that. So when you think about the page rank ladder, every rung of the page rank ladder you climb, from page rank 0 to page rank 1 to page rank 2 and so on, you need 10 times as many links, and you likely need to get them at half the cost of the previous tier, which means that about by page rank 6 you need to be getting all of your future links for free. Okay. And so this notion of I'm going to pay money out of pocket to get a link, it doesn't scale. It's a small websites game, and it doesn't get you very far out of a small website's result. And similarly, for these same reasons, the quality backlink profile, I'm only going to maintain a quality backlink profile, that tends to also be a small websites game, and it's very unnatural because when you look at MSN's backlink profile or CNN's backlink profile or Walmart's backlink profile, it's absolute garbage. So the higher you go on the page rank ladder, the more your backlinks look like average internet backlinks. And so when you have billions of backlinks, that really looks like the average of what's out there for backlinks. So this idea of a quality backlink profile, very unnatural little websites game. Now, that's not to say it doesn't work. We all know that not all backlinks are equal, and this does work. But what this does, the purpose of that type of link building is I want a good start. I have a new website, and I kind of want it to be treated like a medium business. And so if your sole objective is I want a good start, I want my new website to do better than what a new website would do, that you can do with this game, but you don't do it forever and you don't expect it to get you to the highest ranks. What do you think, Lee?
I understand where you're coming from. Yes, they will work. I will tell you this: if you're going to buy links from like Fiverr or other providers, there's 2 things. Never ever point them at your money site because they can have problems with them. So you want to build a tier 1 or tier 2, whatever, and point them at that and just let it work its way up. Because if anything goes wrong, you can always kill the link that goes to your money site, by killing that tier 1. If something horrible happens and, penalty or some other algorithmic something happens, you can kill it. But yes, they'll work. Test them out. Not all of them work well. Not all of them work the same way. But do not point them at your money site. I love, Fiverr links and some of those other things, but never at the money site. They're quick power ups.
And
Never build a backlink profile you can't clean up. I think that's the rule.
And I have to ask you, Charles, at the highest levels of page rank, do you worry about link building?
No. Well, I say no. I said no, but actually, we've discussed how can we get people linking to us who would normally never link to us. So it's not about building out more links per se as it is. How do we change our link graph? There are people that will link to us no matter what we put on our sites. There are people that might link to us, and there are people that will never link to us because maybe they don't. Maybe they actually hate us. But if I can build a resource that anyone will link to, that's the key, because now we have a link graph that's unique from our competition. We have a link from all the different silos of the internet as opposed to our competition. But that's not thinking about it from the terms of page rank or anything like that. I guess obviously it must be getting calculated page rank wise, but it's looking at it from a very, very different point of view, from a branding point of view almost.
Makes sense. All right, I've found a directory folder named PBN known on 5 of my expired domains hosted on a PBN hosting provider. Are the folder name changes advisable to avoid footprints? I think it's unlikely that any human being at Google cares. Now that that's out there, they might search for it and see how big of a problem it is, but odds are it's such, one PBN hosting provider. I mean, they're not going to move the earth to take down one PBN hosting provider. That's kind of not what Google does. Google would rather throw a manual penalty at you and then not fix the problem. That's more likely to happen. I would probably rename it if it doesn't break anything, just because, I mean, it could be a keyword, that could be your exact match instead of PBN known, and the exact match in the URL is a factor, and PBN in the URL, unless you're a PBN hosting provider, is not a factor. But I mean, that would be the reason I change it, is I could do better SEO with a keyword. What do you think, Lee?
I think the Google has from time to time gone through and done sweeps of what they call spammy link providers and things like that, where they'll sign up for various services and take down large networks. So if this is not part of a large network or a known problematic thing, you're probably not going to get caught. But like Ted said, if I can rename the PBN known folder to DUI Lawyer Los Angeles, you get better return on that if it doesn't break everything. So the question for me is, what's the purpose of that particular folder? Is that something that the host puts on? Is that something that a software that's building out the PBN for you puts out there? What's the purpose of that folder? Is it even required for the operation of the site? Because it is a footprint.
All right, next question. I've changed direction this year to make Google Organic bottom of funnel. I'm going to focus traffic as top of funnel. So each article I publish, I have begun to put to many traffic sources. This is okay. The fundamental problem I have with this notion is, the thing I want out of SEO is traffic. So, I don't want to make traffic the input. I know that's a very popular thing to do, and I know there's some evidence that it can work if you make traffic the input, but I really like traffic as the output. And so in my SEO goals, I want the SEO to make traffic, not require traffic. So I still would have my SEO be, have that role of, let's get traffic to the page, and then other initiatives deal with that traffic once we have it. What do you think, Lee?
You know, I'm a lazy shit. So before I would ever re-architect all of my stuff to go down, I would ask you, do you have any evidence whatsoever that building those things and sending the fake traffic to it, works its way down and filters to, increased rankings or increased, traffic via organic ultimately? And what I find is people have a lot of theories. They'll look at patents, they'll look at what people talk about, and very little data. There is little data on this, and the data is not compelling, that I've seen. I'm not saying it's not there, but I think the scale that you have to operate at and the filters you have to go through make that problematic. So I would take a site and manually do the thing that you want to do, but I wouldn't re-engineer my whole SEO process across everything that I'm doing along these lines.
Yeah, and I think what you'll generally find is that small amounts of traffic from different sources really helps you index better. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a strong ranking impactor. I've seen in local that it can be, but those effects seem to be temporary. So when you're no longer trending, you can expect to fall back down. Um, and there really needs to be more testing in that area, I think. Uh, but in terms of like the national, desktop search SEO, I think kind of the best I would hope for out of small amounts of traffic is better indexing. Please invite Jackie Chow as a guest. I'm interested to learn more about that opportunity. So, yeah, have them reach out to me. My name is my Skype ID, so have them ping me with the show concept. I'm not opposed to new guests. Um, let's see. Why is internal linking different when comparing e-commerce website with a pure content website? I think it's very similar. Like, the upselling product carousels are kind of conceptually the same thing as the related post widgets. You're upselling other content on your pages. Um, so I don't see a lot of difference. You have category navigation, you have your main nav, you have your footer nav, you have your upselling widgets that do kind of your broad 80% of silo benefit. Um, yeah, I just don't see much difference. You have more contextual linking in a blog concept. I think it doesn't have to be the case, but generally speaking, that's probably the main difference. Um, and largely because those content links, when you put them in the product description, they're a real pain to go in and fix when you do the website redesign, and online retailers love doing the website redesign every 2 years. So if you put tons of content links into the product descriptions, you've got a nightmare at your next website redesign. Um, any thoughts on that?
No, I think when you're looking at a content website, your blog posts are your products basically. So your top blog posts are your top products. Your most recent blog posts are your hot new products. Your categorical related posts are usually categorically related. And so yeah, I mean it's basically the identical structure if you just think of your products as your blog posts are individual products. So the internal linking is very much the same.
How are you guys preparing for the SEO apocalypse? My answer to that question is know the thing that's killing you. All right. Start there, become an expert at it, because that's probably where the optimization problem is going to shift first. It'll go from SEO to AI optimization, AIO. There'll still be a marketing problem to optimize because people still want eyeballs on their sales. And so I don't think that's going away. So, be ready to pivot, be ready to change. Like we've seen this before. All right. So there was this thing called the graphical web browser, and there were websites, and everybody's like, oh, what's going to happen? And then the payment gateway, oh, we can start buying and selling things online. What's that going to do to the brick and mortars? And then there was all these different search engines, and then Google came out. Oh no, what's going to happen? And so we're kind of in those things again. And we've seen it before. We've seen how it changes, and it's going to change in a similar kind of way. What do you think, Lee?
Well, Honey and I just got back from spending a handful of days out planning 2024. And I'll tell you the way that we thought about it. The way that I envision the AI apocalypse is that SEO as a service is going to get diminished. So whether you're an agency and you're selling SEO services, or whether you're an SEO consultant, or whether you are an SEO course provider, SEO tool provider, anything where you're dispensing SEO advice is going to get impacted by that. But that doesn't mean your SEO skills necessarily will get diminished by that. So we're looking at income streams that are outside of the SEO advice space. So that can be things like affiliate, that can be things like, other types of, software, other types of lead gen, anything where you can use to, create an asset and rank it that is not dependent on SEO being a part of it is, what we're looking at. So it's basically just diversifying that. So if we are correct and SEO related income drops, we're offsetting it with, other assets that are not dependent on SEO advice.
And this kind of falls in line with the next question. Or it's not really a question. I left my career in banking to start my SEO journey. Now I'm questioning my decision. Well, here's the thing. SEO is quick to learn. Like you can become the best SEO in the industry in 2 years. Or one of the best. Just ask Connie. She did it. She's speaking at conferences now. Took her under 2 years. And she was beating people in SEO contests brutally. And so, yeah, it doesn't take long to master this particular trade if you have the right information and the right mindset to learn. So A, it's not too late to get in on SEO, and B, we even disagree on the show on when the apocalypse is, and it could never happen. It could be a weird tinfoil hat thing that SEO stayed around forever. Okay, great. It's a possibility, and we're trying to gauge the fear and what people think the timelines are. And Lee thinks the timeline is 3 years or less. I think it's 3 to 5. I know other people that are experts who think it's closer to 10. And so I don't think you need to panic, but I think it's good to know this tool. And AI in SEO has been tremendously beneficial to me. Like there's good money to be made by marrying the two. So know the thing that's threatening you.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I was going to say, I agree with that. I think the thing is, you have to learn to think about your SEO skills a little bit, differently than the mainstream. Everybody assumes, okay, what I'll do is I'll SEO, I'll get some clients and, I'll SEO them. And that's a very, typical model. Or, if I'm going to go into affiliate, what I'll do is I'll do a laptop, site. No, you don't want to do that. That's a brutally competitive, affiliate space. You want to do, I hope, you want to find these outlying niches. You want to find, things like bolt strippers or something like that. Something that, these little tools or these little niches that nobody cares about that you can just dominate and, make repeatable money after. So if you have, a site that you can generate $100 a month, how many of those do you need to live on? You go build 100 of those little things and you're making 10K a month. That replaces, for most SEOs, that replaces their client base. So you just have to learn to think about, I can apply my SEO skills to other non-standard things. And when you think about it those terms, it's an unlimited space. It's just because nobody else is thinking that way. If you're going to do lead gen, don't do lead gen for personal injury attorneys. Do lead gen for some other underserved niche that nobody either knows or cares about. Then, it's, if you can rank, you can make money in any sort of model. It's just the model that people tend to go for is the agency model.
And for our last question, I know there's a few more questions, but we're kind of way over. So our last question is about the update press release testing. Where are we at with that? And so I am in the process of making about 50 websites and getting them indexed. And then we're going to run press releases to all of them. And then I'll kind of have some broad general understanding of how well these things work. I'm planning on going half one provider, half another if I can, and compare the two. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. These things take time. I know that Lee and others are in the process of doing those things as well.
Yeah.
Any update on your end, Lee?
Well, I think the biggest thing, like I said, that we've planned out sort of 2024, and a big chunk of the planning is not just being clear on what we're going to do, but also what we're not going to do. It's saying no to, the thousand, possibilities that you have. But then now that we have that, we can look and say, where do press releases fit in that? Which of the projects can we utilize those on and get the data? Because one of the things that is important to us in 2024 is testing. And so, it's going to work its way in, but it's not just going to be, all right, I'm going to run this test over here. We're trying to run tests where it also amplifies other things that we're doing. So we get more bang for the buck out of every action that we do because time's a limited resource. So
Yep.
We should see some testing beginning in probably about 3 to 4 weeks based on where we are right now. And we'll be utilizing those, and we'll be happy to report on the results here on Fight Club.
I think that's the key, Lee. What not to do. Everyone try. I mean, and I'm guilty of this myself. I love shiny objects, and I'll go chasing after a shiny object. And often you just got to learn how to say no. Just say no. Stay focused.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's necessary.
Yeah, so it's testing isn't easy or quick.
No.
And if we mess it up, it often needs to be repeated. So hopefully we don't mess it up. All right, with that, thanks